The rusted Keychain subway station smelled like rain and old metal. Trains screamed through the tunnels. People rushed past with blank faces. And the world seemed to move too fast for anyone to notice anything small. But Ella noticed. She was standing near the stairs, soaked from the unexpected downpour, holding a brown paper bag with bread she could barely afford. Her shoes were wet, her coat too thin, and the weight of unpaid bills pressed heavy on her chest. She wasn't there to meet anyone. She wasn't even sure where she was going. It had been a hard day. Another job interview that ended in "we'll let you know." Another hour walking to save bus fare. Then she saw it. On the edge of the platform, just near the yellow line, something small lay on the ground. Akeychain. It looked old, worn leather. A single silver key and a tiny carved charm shaped like a dog. Ella knelt down, picked it up, and turned it in her hand. There was no wallet, no name, just a single key and that strange little dog. Maybe it meant something. Maybe it was just trash. She could have left it. But something in her heart said no. People rushed past each other every day, never stopping, not seeing. She didn't want to be like that. So she walked to the nearest transit desk, asked the man behind the window if anyone had reported something lost. He barely looked up. "Nah, we don't take those here. Do you know if anyone asked about a Keychain?" she pressed. He shrugged. "Lady, I see 100 people a day. If it was valuable, it ain't now." Ella looked down at the Keychain again. It was soaked, scratched, forgotten. But for some reason, she slipped it into her coat pocket. Maybe she'd try again tomorrow. Later that evening, she sat on the floor of her small studio apartment, the lights dimmed to save power. Her dinner was toast. No butter, no tea. She stared at the Keychain on the table. It didn't look like much, but something about it felt personal, like it had been held for years, like it carried stories. On the back of the charm, almost hidden, beneath dirt, she noticed small letters. S.R. Always come home. She whispered the words aloud, her voice barely a breath. Whoever lost this didn't just lose a key, they lost a memory. She pulled out her old phone, took a photo, and posted it to a local lost and found group. "Found this Keychain at 14th Street subway. Please share. Belongs to someone who really cared about it." No one replied. She checked again before falling asleep. Still nothing. The next day, she went to the same platform, waited, looked around. She didn't know what she was expecting. A sign, a person standing with worry in their eyes, but there was no one. Still, she came back the next day, and the next, carrying the Keychain in her coat pocket like a secret, until the 5th day. That's when she saw him. He wasn't dressed like a celebrity. Dark hoodie, old jeans, beard covering most of his face. He stood near the map, head down, holding a small, folded paper. Then he looked around. Lost, searching. His eyes scanned the floor, the walls, the people. Ella stepped closer, slowly. "Did you lose something?" she asked. He turned to her, surprised. His voice was soft. "Yeah, a Keychain, old, kind of ugly, actually." She pulled it from her pocket, held it up without saying anything. His face changed. His eyes filled, not wide or loud, but quiet tears. He took a step closer. "You found it?" She nodded. "I've been trying to find you." He reached for it gently, like it was something sacred. "This was my sister's," he said. "She gave it to me the year before she passed." Ella froze, her hands still holding it. She didn't know what to say. "I thought it was gone forever," he whispered. She slowly placed it in his hand. "I didn't want it to end up in the trash." He looked at her, really looked, not like a stranger, but like someone who had just been given something impossible. Then he said, "What's your name?" "Ella." He smiled, soft, grateful. "Ella, thank you." She nodded. "I didn't expect anything. Just thought it mattered to someone." He chuckled under his breath. "More than you know." He tucked the Keychain into his pocket, nodded once more, and walked away into the crowd. And that was it. No big scene, no thank you gift, no storybook ending. Just a moment between two strangers. She sat down on a bench, heart strangely full. Then, 10 minutes later, a man sat beside her, slightly out of breath, wearing a cap now, different coat. It was him again. "Hey," he said. She blinked. "Hi, I didn't tell you something," he said. She raised an eyebrow. He reached up, pulled off the cap, and suddenly she knew. She stared at him, mouth slightly open, hands frozen. He nodded, almost shy. "Yeah, I'm Keanu." Breakfast with a strangerella stared at him, not blinking, not breathing. Her brain tried to put the pieces together. The same kind man from the subway, the tired eyes, the quiet voice, and now this face, this name. "You're Keanu Reeves," she said slowly, like the words didn't feel real in her mouth. He smiled softly, the way someone does when they're used to being recognized, but still wish they weren't. "Yeah, but just call me Keanu." Ella still didn't move. What are you doing on the subway?" He shrugged. "Just a person trying to get around like anyone else. But you're famous, and still need to get from one place to another." She finally laughed, not because it was funny, but because the entire thing felt impossible. "You came back to tell me who you were?" she asked. He nodded. "I didn't want to leave it like that. You didn't ask for anything, and you treated me like a person. I don't get that very often." Ella looked down, flustered. "I didn't do anything special." He leaned back on the bench, looking up at the ceiling of the station like he had all the time in the world. "That's just it. What you did is rare now." They sat like that for a moment, the noise of the city above humming in the silence between them. Then he turned to her and said something unexpected. "Can I buy you breakfast?" Ella blinked. "What? Breakfast? There's a small diner 2 blocks from here, kind of a hidden place. Nobody bothers me there." She opened her mouth to say no. This wasn't her world. This wasn't normal. But instead, she found herself saying okay. The diner was exactly how he described it. Small, quiet, the kind of place with cracked leather booths and warm coffee that smelled better than it tasted. They sat in the corner. He ordered pancakes and black coffee. She ordered eggs and toast. And for the next hour, they talked. Not about movies, not about fame, about real things. "My sister's name was Sam," he told her. "She gave me that Keychain when we were teenagers. I kept it through every move, every hotel, every shoot. I figured it meant something," Ella said. He nodded. "She was the first person who ever believed I could do something good with my life. She passed away 20 years ago, but I still talk to her sometimes. In my head, I mean." Ella looked down at her plate. "I talk to my dad sometimes. He died in a car accident when I was 16. He looked at her, gently. "I'm sorry." "He was the reason I started writing," she said. "He always said my words could help people feel less alone." "Do you still write?" "Not really. Not anymore." "Why?" She shrugged. "Life happened." He tilted his head. "Maybe life is trying to remind you." Ella looked out the window, feeling something stir in her chest. She hadn't felt it in years. After breakfast, they stepped outside. "Thank you," she said, "for the meal, and just for being kind." He smiled. "Thank you for being human." Before she could respond, a man stepped out of a black car nearby and gave a small nod toward Keanu. "That's my ride," Keanu said. "But I want to give you something." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. The cover was leather, soft, hand-stitched. "It's blank," he said. "But it's yours." She took it, confused. "Why?" "Because someone once gave me something small, and it changed my life. Maybe it's your turn now." He started to walk toward the car. Then he paused. "Ella, yeah, I'm not good at staying in touch, but I'll be back here next Friday. Same bench. If you feel like talking again, I'd really like that." She nodded slowly. "Okay." And then he was gone. Just like that. That night, Ella sat at her table. The apartment still small, still cold, but the notebook sat in front of her. She opened to the first page. No name, no message. Just clean space. Waiting. So she picked up a pen. And started to write. She didn't know what would come of it, but something told her this was the start of something real. The next Friday came with cold skies and quiet wind. The subway station was busy as always, but Ella stood near the same bench with her notebook pressed close to her chest. Her fingers trembled, not because of the cold, but because of the weight of wondering whether he would show up again. She had written every night since their breakfast, not just stories, but feelings, memories, pieces of herself she had buried for years. Somehow, that little leather notebook had opened something in her that she didn't even know was locked. She kept checking the time on her old cracked phone. 8:57 a.m. He said he'd be there by 9. And then, just like that, she saw him. Keanu walked through the crowd like someone who didn't want to be noticed, but couldn't help but be seen. Same hoodie, same quiet eyes. When he spotted her, he smiled gently, like they were old friends. "You came," he said. "You said Friday," she replied. He pointed to the notebook in her hand. "You've been writing, every night." His face lit up. "Can I hear something?" Ella hesitated. "It's not very good. I'm not looking for good. I'm looking for truth." They sat on the same bench, noise all around, trains screaming by, people moving in every direction. But in that moment, it felt like the world had pressed pause. Ella opened to one of the middle pages. Her voice shook as she began to read. "I used to think I was invisible, like the world didn't care if I existed. I was the kind of person who held doors open and no one said thank you, who smiled at strangers but never got one back. But then I found a Keychain. It wasn't mine, it didn't belong to me, but it was loved, and I realized even lost things matter, even forgotten things have value. And maybe so do I." She stopped, afraid to look up. But Keanu just sat there, still, like the words had reached somewhere deep in him. "Ella," he said, softly, "that's not just good, that's honest." She finally looked up. "You really think so?" He nodded. "I felt every word. You've got something rare." Her throat tightened. "I used to believe that. But then bills came. Life came. Writing started to feel like a luxury I couldn't afford." He leaned forward. "But you still did it, even when it was hard. That's what makes it real." She tucked the notebook back into her bag. "What about you? Do you ever feel invisible?" He chuckled quietly. "More often than you'd think. People know my name, my face, but very few know me. Does that bother you?" "It used to. Now, I just look for people who see the real things." They sat in silence again. But this time it was warm, like sitting near a fire, not saying anything, just knowing you weren't alone. After some time, Keanu stood up. "I want to show you something." "Now?" she asked. He nodded. "If you're free. I've got nowhere else to be." He smiled. "Then come on." They walked through the streets, not saying much. She had 100 questions in her mind. Where are we going? Why me? What is this? But something told her to just trust it. After 15 minutes, they arrived at a quiet building tucked between two loud blocks. No signs, no logos. Just a black door with a keypad. He typed a code. The door clicked open. Inside, it was quiet, calm, like a different world. Walls lined with books, shelves of vinyl records, old movie posters, one wall covered in handwritten letters. "What is this place?" Ella asked. "My hideout," he said. "A place I come to remember who I am." She walked slowly, eyes wide. One of the letters on the wall caught her attention. It was dated 15 years ago, written by a child named Tommy. It said, "Thank you for visiting our hospital. I was scared before you came. Now I feel brave. I hope you never forget how kind you are." Keanu stood behind her, watching her read. "That's why I do what I do," he said quietly. "Not for the red carpets, not for the cameras, for people like him." She turned toward him. "And for people like me." He smiled. "Especially for people like you." Before they left, he handed her a thin envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "A gift. Don't open it now. Wait until you're home." She nodded. "Thank you for trusting me with this part of you. Thank you for seeing me before you knew my name." Back at her apartment, she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Double quotes Ella. "This world doesn't always notice the quiet ones, but they're the ones who carry the real weight. You have a voice that needs to be heard. Don't stop writing, ever." Beneath the letter was a check, enough to cover 6 months of rent. She sat on the floor, overwhelmed, not by the money, but by the belief behind it that someone had seen her. And because of that, maybe she could see herself again too. Asterisk letters in the dark. Ella didn't sleep much that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, the letter from Keanu resting in her lap, the check beside it, untouched. Outside, the rain tapped lightly on the window like soft knocks from the sky. She read the letter 3 times, maybe 4. Every word felt like sunlight in a dark hallway. She didn't cry. Not at first. It wasn't until she whispered, "Someone finally believes in me," that the tears came, not loud, not wild, just quiet, steady tears that didn't stop for a long while. By morning, something inside her had shifted. Ella sat at her small kitchen table, her notebook open, a fresh pen in hand. No more excuses, no more fear. She started writing like the words had been waiting for years, like the characters were already alive and had just been patient for her to come back. It wasn't perfect. The sentences stumbled, the scenes needed work, but her heart was in every word, and that was enough. After hours of writing, she did something even braver. She printed 3 of her short stories. Put them in a brown envelope. Wrote the address of a small local publisher on the front. And mailed it. She didn't expect anything, but now she was no longer afraid to try. Friday came again. She returned to the bench, and there he was. Keanu was wearing the same hoodie, but his face lit up when he saw her, as if seeing her made the world feel safe again. "Hey," he said. "Hey, you write anything new?" She nodded. "Mailed it to a publisher." His smile widened. "Yes, I knew you would." They sat together. This time, their conversation was slower, quieter, like people who didn't need to fill every moment. Then, Ella turned to him and asked a question she had been holding. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead. With everything you've been through, how are you still kind?" Keanu leaned back and looked up at the sky, thinking, "Because I've lost enough to know how much kindness matters. When I lost my best friend, my sister, when my life went quiet, it wasn't the big things that helped me heal. It was the stranger who sat with me in silence, the neighbor who left soup at my door, the kid who gave me a drawing at a hospital. Little acts, small mercies." Ella swallowed hard. "So you hold on to them?" "No," he said. "I give them away, one kindness at a time." She looked down at her hands. "I want to live like that." "You already do." A week later, something unexpected happened. A reply came from the publisher, not an email. A real letter. Ella held it with shaking hands, afraid to open it, afraid it might crush her new courage. But when she did, her breath caught. "Dear Ella, your stories touched us deeply. We'd like to meet you." She pressed the paper to her chest and let out a laugh that sounded like surprise and joy mixed together. She met Keanu again at the bench. This time, she brought 2 coffees and a copy of the letter. He read it slowly, then looked up with eyes full of pride. "I knew it. I can't believe it," she said, her voice still shaky. "Believe it? You did this." She nodded, tears threatening. "You helped me." He shook his head. "I only returned a piece of kindness you gave me first." Ella smiled. "How do you always say the right thing?" "I don't," he said. "I just say what's real." Later that evening, they sat on the rooftop of his building, watching the city lights. She looked at him, serious. "Why me?" "Keanu, you meet hundreds of people. Why did you come back for me?" He took a moment before answering. "Because when I lost something important, you gave it back without asking for anything. Not everyone does that. It was just a Keychain." "No," he said softly. "It was a piece of my sister, a reminder of who I used to be. And you brought it back into my hands." Ella looked away. Her voice cracked. "You reminded me who I used to be too. Then maybe we were meant to meet," he said. "Maybe." She whispered. For the first time in years, Ella felt her life unfolding, not breaking, not because of fame, not because of money, but because 2 strangers saw each other, really saw. And in a world that often passes by without looking, that meant everything. Whispers of a Promiseth small publisher's office was on the 3rd floor of an old building, with no elevator. The staircase creaked beneath Ella's shoes as she climbed, holding her printed stories in a neat folder. Her palms were sweaty. Her heart pounded like a drum that wouldn't calm down, but she walked in anyway. A kind woman in a green scarf greeted her. "Ella Grace?" she asked with a smile. Ella nodded. "Yes, that's me. We've been waiting for you." The office was tiny, filled with books and mismatched chairs. A soft lamp glowed in the corner. It didn't feel like a place that judged people. It felt like a place where stories were born. They spoke for an hour. They asked her about her writing, her life, what she wanted her words to do in the world. "I just want people to feel less alone," she said. By the end of the meeting, they offered her something she had never received before, a real chance, a small book deal, her first. Not big money, but enough to start, enough to prove she wasn't invisible anymore. She walked out of that office with a smile so wide it hurt. That evening, she went to the bench early. She wanted to be the first one there. When Keanu arrived, she didn't say a word. She just handed him the folder. He flipped through the first few pages, then looked at her. "This is happening," he said. "I know," she whispered. "It doesn't feel real. You made it real." Ella nodded, tears forming again. "I never thought returning a Keychain would change my life." He smiled. "It changed mine too." They sat in silence, the kind of silence filled with deep meaning. Then Ella asked something small, something soft. "What do you do when good things finally start happening, and you're scared it might not last?" He leaned forward. "You breathe through it, and you keep moving forward, even when you're afraid." "What if I fail?" "Then you fail forward," he said, "but you keep showing up, because the people who matter don't care if you're perfect, they care that you're present." A few days later, Ella received a message from the publisher. They wanted to feature her story in a live reading event. "You'll read one chapter." The message said, "We expect a small crowd, maybe 40 or 50 people." She panicked, stood in front of the mirror, practicing lines. Her voice cracked. Her hands shook. She sent Keanu a message. "I don't think I can do it." He replied in less than 5 minutes. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll be there." On the night of the event, Ella stood behind the curtain, heart thudding. The room was packed, more than 50 people, maybe 100. She peeked through the curtain and saw him. Keanu sitting in the middle row, wearing a soft sweater, baseball cap low, sunglasses off. He gave her a quiet thumbs up. She stepped onto the small stage. The lights were warm, the microphone too close. Her legs felt weak, but she opened the book and began to read. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied, then grew. The story was about a girl who thought she was invisible, who found a Keychain, and who discovered that small acts could echo forever. When she finished, the room went quiet. Then came the applause. Gentle at first, then rising. Ella looked out and found his face again. His eyes shined, proud, warm. After the reading, people came up to her, shook her hand, shared stories of their own. One woman whispered, "I've felt invisible too. Thank you." Outside the hall, Keanu waited for her. She walked toward him, eyes wide, heart full. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she replied. He chuckled. "I barely did anything. You believed in me when I forgot how." He didn't say anything, just smiled and looked up at the stars. "The funny thing," Ella said softly, "is that this whole story only happened because you dropped something without knowing it." He looked at her with a twinkle in his eye. "Maybe some things are meant to be lost, so the right person can find them." They stood there in the night, to people who had once been strangers, now bound by something deeper. Not romance, not fame. But kindness. Pure, quiet, powerful kindness. That night, before bed, Ella opened her notebook. On the last page, she wrote, "He lost a Keychain. I found a purpose. He gave me nothing but belief, and it was everything." The full circlia. Year passed as seasons changed. The city moved forward like it always does, and Ella's life bloomed slowly like a flower that had been growing underground all along, waiting for the right sun. Her first book was published that spring. Not in every bookstore, not on billboards, but it found its readers, people who needed it, people who saw themselves in her quiet words. Letters came in handwritten, just like the one Keanu had once given her. "Thank you for showing me I still matter. Your story made me believe again. I thought I was the only one who felt like this." She kept every letter, stacked them gently in a wooden box she found at a flea market, right next to where she had first mailed her submission. And through all this, Keanu stayed, not in the spotlight. But in real ways. Small notes, unannounced visits to the bench, occasional calls that started with just checking in and ended with both of them laughing about things no one else would understand. He never tried to take credit, never used his name to push her forward. But whenever she stumbled, he was there with a quiet hand and a calm voice. Once, after a long day of rejection from a bigger publishing house, she called him in tears. "I thought this would get easier," she said. He replied softly, "Nothing worth doing ever is. But you're doing it." Months later, Ella stood backstage again, this time at a larger venue. Her second book was being released. The room held more than 200 people. But even in the crowd, she found him. Same row, same seat. Wearing the old HOODIE. As if nothing had changed, and yet everything had. After the event, they walked quietly through the city. The wind was soft, leaves scattered across sidewalks. "Do you ever think," Ella asked, "what would have happened if I hadn't picked up that Keychain?" Keanu smiled. "I try not to think about what didn't happen, just what did. It still amazes me," she said, "how something so small changed everything." "Some stories begin with a grand entrance," he said. "Ours began with a lost key." They both laughed gently. Then Ella stopped walking. "Can I ask you something personal now?" He nodded. "Anything. Do you think you found what you were looking for that day on the subway? I mean, before the Keychain." He looked at her quiet for a moment. Then said, "I was looking for a reason to still believe in people. And you gave it to me." Her eyes filled. She blinked fast, but it didn't help. "You gave me a reason to," she whispered. They didn't hug. They didn't cry. They just stood in the middle of the street as the world moved past them, quiet and still in their own small moment of peace. On the anniversary of the day they first met, Ella visited the subway station alone. She brought with her a small box. Inside it was a new Keychain. Not old, not rusted. But handmade soft leather. A small charm shaped like a pen, and a tiny tag that read, "Always keep writing." She left it near the same spot where she had found his. Not for him, but for someone else. A stranger who might need a small sign that they still mattered. Because she now believed kindness is not a one-time gift. It's a circle. It comes back. Again and again. Through hands, through words, through a quiet man on a rainy day, and a girl who thought she was invisible. Years later, when people asked Ella how it all began, how her books found their way into hearts, how she became a voice for the quiet, and how she knew Keanu Reeves, she never told the whole story. Not because she didn't want to, but because some moments are too pure to be explained. Some moments are meant to be kept between the people and a Keychain that was never really lost, just waiting to be found by the right person.